At the airport check-in counter, my heart was dancing with anticipation. After 10 years of love and marriage, Gavin and I were finally set to take the honeymoon we had postponed countless times. But this trip was more than a getaway. It was a symbol, a renewal, a quiet promise that the sacrifices we made for each other had meaning. As I handed my ID to the agent, my mind wandered to souvenirs, handcrafted keepsakes, exotic chocolates, gifts for both sides of the family. Gavin adored seafood, but his father didn't. Small things to remember. Then a sentence shattered my reverie. "I'm sorry, we couldn't find your ticket." I blinked. "Could you check again?" My voice trembled with disbelief. But the screen didn't lie. "There's no record. Would you like to purchase one now?" My pulse quickened. I fumbled for my phone and called Gavin. The dial tone stretched unbearably until his voice finally came through, calm, distant, indifferent. "Hazel didn't double-check when booking. The system must have defaulted. The refund's too expensive," he said. A pause. "Let's just leave it at that. We're boarding now. You should go home." Go home. Those two words hit like thunder. Where exactly was home? I had moved cities, left my job, distanced myself from family, all for us, for the vision of a life we were supposed to build together. And now the man I stood by for a decade was telling me to simply go back. I stood frozen in the terminal, staring at the screen as it changed from now boarding to final call. I could almost see them boarding first class, Hazel leaning comfortably against him, Gavin flipping through a glossy magazine, completely unfazed by the woman they left behind. A wave of shame, betrayal, and anger surged within me. But then came something unexpected, clarity. Maybe this wasn't an accident. Maybe this moment wasn't meant to destroy me, but to awaken me. I returned to our apartment, packed my belongings. There was nothing left for me there. My laptop was still open, displaying an unread email, an acceptance letter from a foreign university. Today was the deadline to respond. I didn't hesitate. I clicked accept, then booked a one-way flight. And when I held that ticket in my hand, something in me exhaled, deeply, freely. For the first time in years, I wasn't chasing someone else's dream. I had chosen mine. And this time, I wouldn't end up with the wrong ticket. The new country still feels foreign, the climate unfamiliar. But love, for oneself, for life, can transcend disorientation. It can bloom even in unfamiliar soil. 6 years have passed. The air is thick with dust and uncertainty, but I refuse to believe that the Northwest is barren. Sometimes, beauty waits for us in the places we fear the most. Back in that airport, people were still coming and going. Planes ascended toward destinations filled with hope, while I stood there, phone gripped in hand, surrounded by noise, but no longer part of it. The laughter, the rolling suitcases, the excitement, they all belonged to others now. And I realized I wasn't grieving a man. I was grieving a version of myself that stayed silent for too long. Hazel, young, bright-eyed, with her high ponytail and embroidered white blouses, reminded me of who I used to be. Fearless, curious, alive. When had I lost that spark? Maybe it was that night Gavin whispered, "I want to start my own business. When I succeed, I'll marry you properly and take you to Hawaii. I'll propose by the ocean. What kind of diamond ring do you like, baby?" For that dream, I stepped back from my own. I became the quiet supporter, the woman behind the man. And I gave up opportunities, my career, my name. I learned how to cook soups that healed him at night, how to iron his shirts and shine his shoes before sunrise. I delivered urgent documents in sweltering heat and stood shivering outside hotels in the dead of winter, just so he wouldn't catch a cold. But here's the truth no one tells you. If you have to lose yourself to keep someone, it's not love, it's erasure. Love should never demand your silence. A real partnership doesn't ask you to shrink. That day, Gavin boarded a flight, and I boarded a new life. One of them took off into the sky. The other finally learned how to stand on the ground, with both feet planted and a heart no longer waiting to be chosen. But when do people begin to change? That evening, I came home drained, my body heavy with fatigue, but my heart heavier still. As I sat down, my phone buzzed. A friend request. It was Hazel. I paused, fingers hovering over the screen, trembling slightly. After a moment's hesitation, I tapped accept. Neither of us messaged the other, but minutes later, a new post appeared on my feed. First time in Hawaii. They say if you gaze at the ocean with the one you love, you'll be together forever. Attached was a photo from a plane window, looking down over the very ocean Gavin and I once dreamed of seeing together. Gavin, you and I missed our promise, but somehow you kept it, with someone else. I turned off my phone, and for the first time in weeks, I fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. A week passed before Gavin returned. He came bearing gifts, bags of local delicacies for his parents, souvenirs thoughtfully selected for his colleagues. For me, there was nothing, not even a glance of acknowledgement. My phone buzzed again. Hazel had posted once more. Surprise, a gold necklace and bracelet, gifts from my lover. Only real gold can reflect real love. Tell me, does 100 grams of love feel heavy enough? I remembered it instantly. The gold necklace. I had seen it while unpacking Gavin's suitcase. My breath caught in my throat. At first, I thought it might be a gift for me. The design wasn't my style, but that didn't matter. I imagined the moment he would hand it to me with a smile, perhaps an apology wrapped in gold. So I waited, silently, hopefully. But it never came. It wasn't for me. It never was. And in that moment, I realized it didn't matter whether I liked it or not. It wasn't about me. It never had been. That evening, Gavin tossed a plastic bag onto the counter, the thud echoing through the quiet kitchen. Inside were fresh seafood, still glistening with seawater from Hawaii. "Cook this tonight. I'll have dinner at home," he said, as casually as if he were asking for the weather. I stared at the bag. A familiar bitterness rose in my throat. He forgot. I'm allergic to seafood. Not only can I not eat it, I can't even handle it. For years he knew this. For years he accommodated it. But now without thought, without care, he handed me what could poison me, physically and emotionally. There wasn't even hesitation in his eyes, just a quiet frustration, as if to say, I've already brought something home. Isn't that enough? Without a word, I took the bag into the kitchen. The crabs were massive, their shells thick and unyielding. I struggled to crack them open. A sharp edge sliced my palm. Salt water and blood mixed together, the scent of betrayal and brine filling the room. I didn't know how to cook it properly. I simply steamed everything and placed it on the table. He sat, picked up a piece, and took a bite. Within moments, his expression darkened. "You're home all day, and you still can't make a decent meal," he snapped. "Such good ingredients, completely wasted." He dropped his chopsticks with a clatter. "Forget it, I've lost my appetite. Eat by yourself." And with that, he walked away. I sat there, staring at the untouched plate. My chest ached, not from the insult, but from what I remembered next. Years ago, he had once visited my grandfather with me. It was the first time he met my family. My grandfather, elated, had insisted on cooking. He made his signature fried rice, a dish from my childhood. But age had caught up with him. He used too much salt. The vegetables were overcooked, some burnt, others raw. The green peas were as hard as pebbles. Gavin, coming from the north, never liked rice, especially not plain fried rice. I was about to make an excuse for him when I saw him smiling, eating it enthusiastically. "Grandpa, this is delicious," he said between bites. "I hope I can come back and have it again." He even reached out to gently wipe the stray grains of rice from my grandfather's mouth. On the way home, I asked, "You don't even like rice. Why did you eat so much?" He smiled. "Silly. It wasn't about the food. It was about meeting your family with you. That was the real gift." That day, I gave him more than love. I gave him my trust, the kind that takes years to build and seconds to shatter. Because when love is present, even the worst cooked meal tastes like a blessing. But when love fades, even the finest delicacies lose their flavor. They become hollow rituals, like steam without substance. That night, after Gavin walked it out, he stopped coming home as often. The distance between us was no longer just emotional. It was structural. A crack had become a canyon. I stayed up, scrolling aimlessly. Then a headline caught my eye. Chairman secures city's largest government project. A man who once chased dreams with empty pockets had now conquered a metropolis. And somewhere along that climb, he had dropped the very hand that once lifted him. Gavin's company has a promising future. In the accompanying photo, Gavin stood at the center of a grand stage, bathed in brilliant lights, exuding confidence and authority. A proud, knowing smile curved his lips as he addressed the audience, while executives applauded enthusiastically behind him. Yet, what drew my attention the most was Hazel diligently serving tea, pouring drinks, and attending to him with a level of care that stood out. Even in the background, a bitter taste rose in my throat as I exited the news app and clicked on Hazel's moments. I told him not to drink so much, but Boyan just wouldn't listen. Now I have to go through the trouble of taking him back. The attached image showed the entrance of a luxurious hotel, its neon lights reflecting off the glass facade against the night sky. My grip on the phone tightened, my stomach twisting at the irony. Gavin's, his company, still bore the name that once symbolized the two of us. It was meant to stand for Gavin, someone. Back when that someone was me. But now he was at a hotel with another woman, indulging in drinks, and God knows what else. I didn't hesitate. I hailed a cab straight to the hotel. If I really saw something tonight, then so be it. I'd end things cleanly. Gavin was a frequent guest here, and the front desk staff recognized me immediately. Their expressions were uneasy, their eyes darting away as if afraid to get involved, ignoring them. I stepped into the elevator and found his room number with ease. Standing before the door, I took a deep breath, my pulse hammering against my ribs. A part of me wavered. Once upon a time, we had built everything together, shared sleepless nights, chasing our dreams, and now I was here like a fool, about to expose his betrayal with my own eyes. I pushed the door open inside. Chaos greeted me. Gavin's suit was discarded carelessly on the floor, his tie draped over a chair, and the air carried a mix of alcohol and an unfamiliar perfume by the bed. Hazel stood in a silk nightgown, rummaging through a bag at the sound of the door creaking. She turned a lazy smile, still lingered on her lips, but when she saw me, her face went rigid before she shrieked. "How did you get in here?" Her scream jolted Gavin awake. He frowned, rubbing his temples as his blurry gaze found me. He blinked as if trying to focus, and then let out a tired sigh. "Don't be afraid," he murmured to Hazel. "Go outside, I'll handle this." Hazel hesitated, casting me a resentful glare before stomping off in her slippers. The room was silent, save for the faint hum of the air conditioner. Gavin pulled the blanket over his disheveled clothes and shot me an impatient look. "What are you doing here?" I chuckled, though there was no humor in it. Lifting my phone, came to check out my new hat. He looked confused for a moment before realization dawned, his expression twisting into one of irritation. "You are talking nonsense. Can't you see?" Nothing happened. I stepped further into the room, my voice, cold and steady, clothed, scattered on the floor. "A woman in your bed. What else has to happen before you'd admit something?" Gavin scoffed, dismissive. "Is this about me not taking you on trips? Don't be ridiculous. I'll make it up to you next time." He patted the bed casually, as if that would ease the tension. "Hazel's young, she just started working, doesn't have much money, and rarely gets the chance to enjoy herself. Don't be petty." His words were like a slap to the face. My fingers tightened around my phone as I scrolled through my contacts, pulling up a number and flashing the screen at him. "You claim there's nothing going on. Fine. Call at her right now. Fire her. Give her proper compensation, and cut all ties. Can you do that?" Gavin sat up sharply, his face darkening as he barked. "Charlotte, when did you become so cruel?" His voice was thick with anger as he pointed at me. "Hazel is just a girl from the countryside. If you force me to fire her now, how will she survive in this city?" I stared at him, incredulous. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "Since when did you care so much about other people's struggles?" Gavin leaned back against the headboard, crossing his arms as a smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. You've been holed up at home too long to understand for a girl trying to make it on her own. A job means everything." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Hazel is different from you. She's independent. She knows her worth. Do you understand that?" Something inside me crumbled at that moment. Back in college, we were equals. We built our dreams side by side. We started from nothing, fueled by ambition and countless sleepless nights. But now here he was standing in this dimly lit hotel room, looking at me as if I was some outdated relic while he spoke of another woman's worth. For the first time, I realized there was nothing left to fight for. I had already lost. During our university years, Gavin and I were always competing for the top spots in our class. No matter how difficult the coursework was, we pushed each other forward, constantly striving for excellence every morning at 8. He would prepare breakfast for me, sometimes a simple sandwich and coffee, other times a carefully plated meal with fresh fruit, as if even the smallest details deserved attention. We worked tirelessly together, collecting scholarships and honors, as if they were milestones, marking our journey. Whenever he received an award, the first thing he did was spend it on me. New cosmetics, stylish clothes, delicate jewelry, even the latest phone. He never hesitated, always saying, "You deserve the best." At school, we were known as the power couple of our field, admired for both our academic prowess and our seemingly unbreakable bond. Professors praised our teamwork. Classmates envied our relationship, and for a long time, I believed we were destined to conquer the future together. When Gavin started his business, I didn't sit idly by every night. While he worked late at the office, I was at home drafting proposals, fine-tuning strategies, and using my expertise to help build the company. Many times, I couldn't bear to see him exhausted from overtime, so I quietly completed entire project plans for him, sending them out before dawn, hoping he would get at least a few hours of rest for his dream. I sacrificed my own ambitions. I told myself that relationships required compromise, that love meant supporting each other unconditionally. But in the end, it was Gavin who turned around and told me that I wasn't keeping up with him, that I was falling behind, that I wasn't walking beside him anymore. It was then that I realized this needed to end when I returned to my hometown to look for a job. Gavin never reached out. Days passed in silence, and I convinced myself that it was for the best. But then out of nowhere, he sent me a message. "I have good news to share tonight. Remember to prepare dinner." A part of me foolishly felt a flicker of anticipation, so I went all out. I spent the entire afternoon cooking, filling the table with his favorite dishes. The aroma of freshly grilled seafood filled the air, and I even made typhoon shelter prawns a recipe. I had just learned something I thought he would love. When Gavin walked through the door, his excitement was almost tangible. His eyes sparkled with uncontained joy, and for a fleeting moment, I let myself believe that maybe this was a turning point for us. I smiled and asked, "What's the good news?" He took my hand, his grip warm and familiar, but the words that followed made my blood run cold. "Baby, haven't you always said you don't want children?" His tone was light, almost teasing. "Well, Hazel is pregnant. She said she doesn't care about having a title. She just wants to give me a child." The world seemed to tilt. "She understands that you don't want kids, but my parents, they've always wanted me to continue the family line." So I was thinking I didn't let him finish. The next thing I knew, I was standing, the table flipping over with a loud crash, dishes shattering against the floor. "Are you out of your mind?" "Gavin," my voice trembled, not just with anger, but with something deeper, a profound, cutting betrayal. "You went behind my back, did something that disgusts me, and now you have the audacity to call it good news." My stomach churned, the overwhelming nausea surging forward. I barely made it to the bathroom before I threw up. Gavin followed me, but instead of concern, his face twisted in irritation. "Charlotte, can you stop making a scene? You don't want children, fine. But do you expect me and my parents to go without an heir? Forever is threatening me with divorce. Your solution?" I wiped my mouth, gripping the sink for support. My whole body was shaking. "I'm telling you now," he continued, his voice sharp and final. Hazel and that child are my priority. You should think carefully before doing anything reckless." Then he scoffed, stepping back. You have no family here. If you divorce me, where can you even go?" A hollow laugh escaped my lips. So this was what our years together amounted to: manipulation, betrayal, and an utter disregard for me as a person. And just like that, he left, slamming the door behind him without a second glance. As I sat on the cold bathroom floor, memories surfaced, fragments of a time when things were different, when love still felt real. I remembered a New Year's Eve party back in our freshman year when our class held a gift exchange. By sheer coincidence, Gavin and I had drawn each other's names at the beginning of the new student's enrollment. Gavin stood on the stage as the freshman representative, radiating confidence and youthful energy. His voice was steady, his presence commanding, and the sunlight streaming in from the tall windows cast a golden glow around him, making him seem almost untouchable. That was the moment I fell in love at first sight. 4 days. I agonized over how to express my feelings, pouring every fleeting thought and unspoken word into my secret love diary. Alongside it, I prepared a ring engraved with his name, a token of my quiet devotion, something tangible to hold on to, in a world where love often goes unnoticed. When the time finally came, my hands trembled as I handed the small package to him. My heartbeat was so loud, I feared he might hear it. Gavin was just as nervous. His fingers shook slightly as he reached out, and in his flustered state, the gift slipped from his grasp, landing softly on the ground. For a moment, he froze. Then quickly, he bent down, carefully picking it up, as if it was something fragile, something precious. Without a second thought, he dusted it off against his clothes, his movements almost reverent. Looking back, that was one of the rare times I had ever seen him so nervous. But what surprised me even more was the gift he had prepared for me. He reached into his bag and pulled out a jersey, faded yet carefully preserved, its fabric worn with thigh. The signature on it belonged to a legendary player, one who had passed away. I knew how much this jersey meant to him. It wasn't just a piece of memorabilia. It was his faith, his unwavering belief in something greater than himself. I hesitated, my fingers barely brushing the fabric before pulling away. "That's your most important thing," I said softly. "You should keep it." But Gavin didn't move. He held up the diary and the ring. I had given him his gaze, unwavering, as he whispered, "The most important things to me are far away in the sky, yet close at hand." Now, years later, he stood before me again, his voice calm, detached, void of the warmth it once held. "The child in another woman's belly is the most important thing to me now." His words felt like a blade, cold and final, slicing. Through the last remnants of my foolish hopes, I wandered aimlessly onto the streets. The city I had lived in for 6 years suddenly felt foreign, like a place I had never truly seen before. I had always been in a rush, hurrying to deliver documents for his career, racing to the market to pick the freshest, cheapest vegetables, ensuring he ate well while we saved money. My entire existence revolved around him, his needs, his future. But now, for the first time, I walked without purpose, no destination, no obligation, just me lost in a sea of unfamiliar faces. I looked up at the countless lights twinkling in the skyline 6 years ago. I had believed that among them there would surely be one that belonged to me. 6 years later, I had lost everything. "Miss, get out of the way!" Shouts of alarm mixed with the sharp screech of brakes. I barely had time to register what was happening before everything went dark. When I woke again, a stark white ceiling stretched above me. The harsh scent of disinfectant filled my nose, making me wince. I tried to move, but pain shot through my body like a warning, as if every bone, every muscle had been shattered and hastily pieced back together. I felt like I was falling apart. I answered, "Hello, how are you?" On the other end of the phone, it was actually Gavin's parents' voices. "Charlotte, I am Gavin's mother. When do you have time to come back and take a look?" G. Venus, simply crazy. He drinks every day and even starts smoking like crazy. Gavin, do S&T smoke because I hate the smell of smoke the most to this end. When he first started his business, he would rather give up those large orders from heavy smokers just to prevent the clothes from smelling like smoke and affecting me. He said he would never smoke in his life. It's just that now it has nothing to do with me anymore. Gavin's mother told me a lot of things. She said that on the day I left Gavin to sell to a private hospital, ignoring Hazel's objections, and forcibly aborted the child. Why did you send Charlotte ethos screenshots, you wicked woman? No, if you keep this child, my Charlotte will hate me for a lifetime. You can forget about it. Finally, a notice was issued to the entire industry, risking their own reputation to speak out about these scandals, leading to the ban of Hazel. Hazel, the child is gone, Gavin, and it's the same attitude again. There's no hope for promotion. So she called the police and sent GTO the police station for detention. Finally, under the coordination and compensation of Gavin's parents, Gavin was released. After being released, Gavin was distracted. Every day I sit idly in the house where we used to live, drowning my sorrows in alcohol, and the whole place is filled with a foul atmosphere. Gavin's parents went to persuade, but it was of no use. I listened, but my heart was completely unmoved, only apologizing to Gavin's mother. Sorry, Aunt. I have to go back on my word about treating you and Uncle as my biological parents. Gavin and I are really going to end it. I forgive him, but who will make my child forgive me? This useless mother, Gavin's mother, has not spoken for a long time. Finally, I sigh deeply. Daughter, where are you? I had Gavin sign the divorce agreement and give it to you. We didn't become a family. It's you and your aunt, destined to meet, but not meant to be. Hearing this, I started to have a headache again. Maybe it's the after effects of the car accident, or perhaps it's because I didn't take good care of myself during the postpartum period and caught a chill. It seems that I have also sacrificed half of my life for my love. I finally revealed my address. Seeing Gavin again was one evening when I was walking by the seaside. Gavin looked a bit haggard, but he made an effort to tidy up his appearance and changed into clean clothes. He saw me, hesitated a bit, but also seemed to be testing. We haven't taken a walk by the sea yet. Can we walk together? I didn't refuse. I really have no ambition. I think this belated seaside walk at the age of 28 can be seen as a compensation for the 18-year-old us in a time-space dislocation. We walked quietly together without saying a word. After finishing our walk, we didn't say a word. Gavin followed me home before going upstairs. I asked, "Where's the divorce agreement?" Gavin was very hurt and brokenly asked me, "Charlotte, can we really not start over? You really don't want to give me another chance? You supported my entrepreneurship so resolutely back then you were willing to wash your hands to make soup for me, to plan for me to revise the proposals." Hearing him say these words of reconciliation gives me a headache. I patiently interrupted him. Then why didn't you think about these things when you were cheating? Even if I forgive you, will our dead child forgive you? Say it. I don't want to get entangled when you bring the divorce agreement. Then come find me again. After saying that, I went upstairs without looking back. Gavin entered the room just as I was waking up. The moment he saw my eyes flutter open, his face lit up with joy, and he rushed to my side. "Charlotte, you are awake. Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Wait, I'll call the doctor right away." His voice trembled slightly, as if he had been holding his breath this entire time. The doctor arrived quickly, performing a routine checkup before speaking in a calm but serious tone. "Your condition is stable, but you need plenty of rest. A miscarriage can take a heavy toll on the body, so it's crucial to focus on proper nutrition." A miscarriage, the word hit me like a punch to the gut. My mind went blank for a moment before the meaning fully sank in. I had been pregnant 2 months. I hadn't even realized it. My cycle had been irregular due to stress, and with everything going on, it had never crossed my mind. But now it didn't matter because the child was gone. Flashes of the accident came back to me. I had been walking along the street when an electric scooter lost control and hurtled straight toward me. It slowed down at the last second. And though I wasn't seriously injured, the impact had been enough to take away a life before I even knew it existed. I had a child, and now without even a moment's notice that child had left me. Had they sensed that this was not a home worth coming into? Had they even in the womb realized that this world, my world, was filled with too much pain? A sharp, suffocating ache wrapped around my chest. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing down the rising grief. "Thank you, doctor," was all I could manage. Gavin's fingers wrapped around my hand, warm and firm. His grip was desperate, as if he was afraid I would slip away just like the child had. "Charlotte, what do you want to eat? I'll go get it for you," he asked hurriedly, searching my face for a response. "Charlotte, please don't be too sad. The doctor said you need to be mindful of your emotions." His voice softened thick with guilt. "This is all my fault. If I hadn't argued with you that night, you wouldn't have run out, and none of this would have happened." I stared at the ceiling, silent. "Charlotte, you have no idea." He continued, his voice breaking slightly. "When I got the call saying you were in the hospital, I was terrified. I was so afraid of losing you. If anything had happened to you, I pulled my hand away from his grasp, the warmth between us breaking apart like a snapped thread. My voice was quiet but ice cold. "Don't you still have Hazel?" I asked, my lips curling slightly in mockery. "She and the child she's carrying. That's what's most important to you." Gavin's expression froze. A flicker of guilt flashed across his face before he composed himself. "I promise you I'll cut ties with her. I'll call her Chur right now and make sure she resigns." His words were rushed, desperate. "We don't have to get a divorce. We can be okay again. We can fix this." "Charlotte." I had no energy to argue. I turned away, shutting my eyes. "I'm tired. I want to sleep." "You can go for a long moment." Gavin didn't move. Then he exhaled slowly, almost defeated. "I'll go get you that milk, egg, rice, wine you like from that place you always used to go. I'll be back soon. Just rest." "Okay." I didn't respond. As I lay there in the sterile white hospital room, the reality of everything settled deep in my bones. The man I had loved for a decade had become a stranger. The child I never had the chance to meet had already paid the price for my choices. It was time to start over. I stayed in the hospital for several more days before I was cleared for discharge. Gavin arranged for me to stay in a VIP suite, hiring a professional caregiver and ensuring I had everything I needed. He barely left my side, practically moving his office into my hospital room. "Charlotte, be careful. Don't move too fast. Do you need to go to the bathroom? I'll help you, Charlotte. I learned how to make 5 red soup recently. It's supposed to be really good for recovery. I'll bring some for you in a bit. Charlotte, do you want to visit your childhood home when you're feeling better? We can go back for a while after that. We can see the East China Sea, the South China Sea. Wherever you want to go, we'll go together." He spoke endlessly, as if trying to drown out the silence between us. I barely responded. Still, he wasn't deterred. He simply continued, as if performing a monologue. "I'm sorry, Charlotte. I know I messed up. I know I went too far, but I'll change. I swear." A week passed, and I felt like I had mostly recovered. My body was healing, but my mind, my heart felt like it had been shattered, beyond repair. The only thing that lingered was the occasional headache, especially when Gavin's voice, droned on in my ears. My headache intensified, a dull throbbing at the base of my skull that refused to subside. His words blended into an irritating hum, each syllable like a hammer against my already fragile nerves. Without thinking, I grabbed whatever was within reach and held it in his direction. "Get lost. Can you stop talking? I feel sick." My voice was hoarse, laced with exhaustion and frustration. The object, a pillow, or maybe a book, landed with a dull thud on the floor. Gavin, unfazed, merely bent down to retrieve it. His expression as patient as ever, he quietly picked up everything that hadn't broken, gathering the scattered mess with a calmness that only made me more irritable. "It's okay," he murmured, his tone almost indulgent. "You can take out your anger on me however you want." "Charlotte." On the day of my discharge, Gavin arrived with a large gift bag placing it gently on the chair beside my hospital bed. He reached into it and pulled out a Chanel-inspired ensemble, a neatly tailored jacket, and matching skirt in a style I once adored. Then, without hesitation, he handed me a company stock transfer contract, his eyes solemn, almost reverent. "Charlotte," he said, his voice carrying a rare sincerity, "I was wrong to say you don't understand the workplace. Now I'm handing the company over to you, okay?" He lifted the outfit slightly, smoothing the fabric as if presenting a cherished relic. "This is the style you used to love when you worked at the company. I bought you several sets. Take a look and see if you still like them." A brief pause, then, with quiet desperation, he added, "From today on, I'll listen to you about everything. Just don't leave me, okay?" I barely glanced at the clothes before setting them aside. I didn't answer. Gavin didn't know. I hadn't liked this style for a long time, maybe years. Somewhere along the way, I had grown to prefer the softness of knitwear, the comforting embrace of sweaters, but he never noticed, or maybe he never bothered to. I couldn't even remember when my taste had changed, just as I couldn't pinpoint when Gavin had begun hurting me so carelessly, so mercilessly while I was in the hospital. Hazel had sent me messages, too many filled with an odd mixture of mockery and false concern. "Do you know how Mr. Chin talks about you in front of me?" Then came screenshots of their chat history. "I don't know why, but lately just looking at Charlotte irritates me. She stays home all day doing nothing, overly sensitive and paranoid. It was just a ticket. I forgot to buy her one. Big deal. Can't she buy it herself? She's been a housewife for so long. Does she not even have money for a ticket? Hazel, your cooking is really terrible. I miss the steamed king crab you used to make." Hazel, honestly, I don't even want to go home anymore. I miss the days we spent hanging out together. Hazel, I'm sorry about what happened at the hotel today. Charlotte just has too much going on. I feel bad for you. I scrolled through them lazily, barely reacting. My headache was still there, a dull reminder of everything I had endured. If this had been the past, maybe I would have broken down. Maybe I would have confronted him, cried, begged for answers, but now I found that I didn't really care. No, that wasn't quite right. It wasn't that it didn't matter. It was just that none of it seemed to make a difference anymore. Still, I saved the screenshots Hazel sent me. I had a feeling they might come in handy someday after returning home. Gavin barely had time to settle in before his phone rang. An urgent company matter had come up, and he had to leave immediately. As he put on his coat, he turned to me, his hands resting on my shoulders with uncharacteristic gentleness. "Charlotte, just stay home and rest. Okay, when I get back, I'll bring you your favorite sweet and sour pork." I gave him no response. He hesitated for a moment. I then turned and left, glancing back at me 3 times before finally stepping out the door. As soon as he was gone, I started packing. I didn't take much, just a few of my favorite knit sweaters, soft and warm. The kind I actually wore. They fit neatly into the small suitcase I had brought with me when I first moved to the city. At the bottom of my jewelry box, tucked beneath layers of forgotten trinkets, lay a silver bracelet, my grandfather's parting gift to me. As I lifted it, my fingers brushed against something else. Rings, necklaces, gold bracelets, pieces Gavin had bought me in the early days of our company. I remembered how his eyes used to light up back then, how he'd press a new piece of jewelry into my hands every time he signed a big contract. "Charlotte, when the company grows, I'll buy you the most expensive one." But the company grew, and he changed. I left them all behind. As I moved through the apartment, I noticed something odd. All our daily necessities, our plates, our toothbrushes, our towels had once been in matching sets. Everything was meant for 2. But over time, as Gavin's social engagements increased and his nights at home dwindled, we had unconsciously stopped sharing. The plates were no longer paired, the towels hung separately, and our once shared bed felt more and more like a stranger's space. It turned out that even before today, I had already been living alone. I packed up everything I usually used, sorting through the remnants of a life I had once built within these walls. Some things I decided weren't worth keeping. I would throw them away. Later on the entrance table, I carefully placed the pre-printed divorce agreement, along with the screenshots of Hazel's messages, the ones she had so proudly sent me detailing the affair, as if she were giving me a gift. The truth was there, undeniable, waiting for him to see it. In my left hand, I held a small tattered box, the one that had once contained a promise, now reduced to a painful relic. With my right, I clutched a bag filled with the last traces of my life in this place. I slipped on my shoes, ready to leave just before stepping out. I turned back for one final glance. The furniture was still arranged the same way. The decorations remained untouched, yet the space felt foreign, like a museum exhibit of a life that no longer belonged to me. It was strange how a place could look identical, yet feel so completely different. I had once thought that when people left, there would be drama, yelling, slammed doors, tears shed on the floor. But in the end, true departure was silent, leaving no trace behind. Not long after I left, my phone buzzed violently in my pocket, lighting up with relentless notifications. Gavin, his name flashed repeatedly, alternating between calls and messages. I hesitated before glancing at the screen. "Charlotte, where have you been? Please trust me. I'll change. We won't get a divorce. Okay, I'll tell Hazel to get rid of the child. You are the only one I want to have my baby. I'll cook from now on. I'll take care of the little things. You can do whatever you want. Do you still want to travel? Tell me where. I'll book the tickets. I swear. This time I won't make a mistake." The messages kept coming, desperate, pleading, promising things he never intended to fulfill. I stopped reading. My head began to ache. The past was clawing at me, but I refused to let it drag me back. I arrived at the airport, and this time I bought my own ticket to Hawaii. The ocean that he had promised me the trip, that should have been ours. I would see it on my own at the check counter. I handed over my documents, feeling oddly detached. The places were the same, but the people had changed. It was over, truly over. Before I could say a word, tears whirled in my eyes and slipped down my face. After completing the check-in process, I took out my SM card, snapped it in half, and tossed it into a passing trash can. When the plane took off, I gazed out of the window, watching the city shrink beneath me. Goodbye, Evercrest. Goodbye, 10 years of love. Hawaii greeted me with warm breezes and endless waves. I rented a small place, simple but comfortable, and began piecing my life back together during the day. I took on online jobs to make ends meet at night. I walked along the beach, letting the ocean air clear my thoughts. The days passed peacefully, slowly smoothing over the sharp edges of my past. Occasionally Gavin crossed my mind, not with longing, but with curiosity. Why hadn't he sent the divorce agreement yet? That question lingered in the back of my mind until one evening. As I was finalizing the last project proposal of the day, my phone suddenly rang an unfamiliar number. I hesitated, then I picked it up. When I picked up the phone, I answered with the usual politeness. "Hello, how are you?" But instead of the voice, I expected Gavin's parents were on the other end. "Charlotte, it's me, Gavin's mother." Her voice carried a mix of exhaustion and desperation. "When do you have time to come back and take a look?" Gavin. His lost his mind. She sighed heavily before continuing, her tone filled with worry. "He drinks every day, and now has even started smoking like crazy." Smoking. That struck me as odd. Gavin had always despised the smell of cigarettes because I hated it the most. In the early days of his business, he had even turned down lucrative deals with heavy smoking clients just to avoid coming home reeking of tobacco. I still remember him declaring so confidently, "I will never smoke in my life." But now that promise no longer had anything to do with me. Gavin's mother continued speaking, her words unraveling a story that left me cold. She told me that on the day I left, Gavin had taken Hazel to a private hospital, ignoring her protests. He had forcibly arranged for the child to be aborted. "Why did you send Charlotte those screenshots? You wicked girl," Gavin's mother had yelled at Hazel, furious. But Gavin had been unwavering. "If you keep this child, Charlotte will hate me for a lifetime." Forget it. Then, in a desperate move, he had issued a public statement to the entire industry exposing Hazel's scandals. He didn't care about the consequences, even if it meant damaging his own reputation, just to ensure she would be blacklisted with the child gone and her career destroyed. Hazel retaliated in the most brutal way. There was no longer any future for her at work, and any hope of advancement had been obliterated. So she did the only thing she could. She called the police and had Gavin arrested. His parents had to pull every string they could, offering compensation and negotiating tirelessly just to get him released. But once he was out, he was no longer the same day after day. He shut himself inside the house we once shared, drowning himself in alcohol. The once familiar space had turned into a place of decay, filled with the stale stench of liquor and hopelessness. His parents tried to reason with him, but nothing worked. I listened quietly, but my heart remained unmoved. When Gavin's mother finally paused waiting for a response, I simply said, "I'm sorry, Auntie." There was a long silence. "I have to go back on my word about treating you and Uncle as my own parents." I continued, my voice calm but firm. "Gavin and I, this time, it's really over. I forgive him." I added after a moment, "But tell me who will make my child forgive me, the child I failed to protect?" On the other end of the line, Gavin's mother didn't speak for a long time. Then finally, she let out a deep, weary sigh. "Charlotte, where are you?" she asked. "I had Gavin sign the divorce agreement. He will give it to you." Her next words lingered in the air, soft yet heavy. "We didn't become family after all. Perhaps it was fate. We were meant to meet, but not meant to stay." At that, a dull ache spread through my skull. Maybe it was the lingering effects of the accident. Maybe it was the cold I had caught from neglecting myself during my postpartum recovery. Or maybe it was just love taking the last bit of life from me. I closed my eyes for a moment before finally giving her my address. I saw Gavin again one evening by the seaside. The sky was painted in soft hues of purple and orange, the waves rolling gently against the shore. The salty breeze filled the air, carrying with it the echoes of distant laughter from families and lovers strolling along the beach. He looked different, tired, worn down, but he had made an effort to clean himself up. His clothes were neat, and his posture was less defeated than before. When he spotted me, he hesitated for a second, as if unsure of how to approach, then testing the waters. He said, "We never did take that walk by the sea, did we?" There was a quiet vulnerability in his voice. "Can we walk together?" I didn't refuse. Maybe it was because I no longer had the strength to hold on to resentment, or maybe it was because in some twisted way, I wanted this, a belated seaside walk at 28, a borrowed moment stolen from the 18-year-old versions of ourselves who once dreamed of it, a fragment of time dislocated from reality. We walked side by side in silence, neither of us speaking, just letting the sound of the waves fill the space between us. After the walk, we still didn't speak, but he followed me home, his presence lingering like a shadow. Before going upstairs, I finally asked, "Where is the divorce agreement?" The question seemed to knock the air out of him. Gavin looked at me, his expression breaking, his voice hoarse. "Charlotte, can we really not start over?" His eyes searched mine for something, anything that would give him hope. "You believed in me once," he said. "You supported me through everything. You gave up so much for me. You made soup for me, stayed up late to revise proposals planned for my future." His words trailed off as I exhaled sharply, the familiar ache in my temples intensifying. I was tired, exhausted of this conversation, of these belated regrets, of the weight of a love that had long since crumbled. "Then why didn't you think of these things when you were cheating?" I cut him off, my voice flat. He flinched, but didn't say anything. "Even if I forgive you," I continued, "will our dead child forgive you?" Gavin opened his mouth, but no words came. I didn't want to get entangled in this any longer. "When you bring the divorce agreement, come find me again," I said simply. Then, without looking back, I walked upstairs, leaving him standing there in the dim light of the evening. Gavin called out my name from behind, his voice hoarse and desperate, cut through the damp night air. Charlotte, Charlotte. I didn't look back, not even once that night. Heavy rain fell over Hawaii, pounding against the windows. With relentless force, the rhythmic tapping of raindrops filled the silence, and as I lay in bed listening, my eyelids grew heavy. Once upon a time, storms like this frightened me. I used to believe that spirits roamed in the rain, lurking in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to slip into my house and swallow me whole. On those stormy nights, my grandfather would sit by my bedside, gently waving a palm leaf fan and whispering words of comfort. "Don't be afraid, little girl, Grandpa is right here with you." As I grew older, Gavin took over that role. Every time the rain poured outside, he would pull me into his arms, his embrace warm and steady. "Charlotte, I promised your grandfather that I would protect you, but I can't remember when that changed. I don't know when rainy nights stopped, meaning warmth and safety. Somewhere along the way, Gavin stopped coming home when it rained. At first, I couldn't sleep. I spent those long nights tossing and turning, waiting for the sound of his key in the door, for his arms to wrap around me like they used to. But with time, the sleepless nights faded. The fear of storms disappeared. Eventually, I learned to fall asleep alone. It was all in the past now. The next morning, I was jolted awake by the voice of the elderly woman who lived downstairs. Her exclamations rose through the morning air, filled with a mix of shock and concern. By the third day, I heard her again, this time, with a note of urgency in her voice. "Oh dear young man, you're soaked to the bone. Here, take an umbrella." Groggy and disoriented, I leaned out of the window trying to see what the fuss was about, and then I saw him. Gavin standing outside his clothes, clinging to his body, drenched from head to toe. He had been there all night. The rain had not stopped, and, in the early morning mist, the chill of Hawaii, dawn still lingered. Even from a distance, I could see his shoulders trembling from the cold, his hands shoved deep into his pockets as if trying to preserve what little warmth he had left. I sighed, grabbed a jacket and made my way downstairs. As soon as Gavin saw me step out of the building, his face lit up. His lips were pale from the cold, but his eyes, those familiar eyes, were filled with something almost hopeful. "Charlotte, you are awake," he said quickly. "Are you hungry? I can." I cut him off before he could finish. My voice was steady, emotionless. "Where is the divorce agreement?" The hopeful glimmer in his eyes flickered. Then slowly, it dimmed. He hesitated for a moment, as if trying to find the right words, but in the end, all he did was lower his head and reach into his pocket as he handed me the document. His fingers trembled slightly. "It rained all night," he murmured. "Were you scared?" I didn't answer, Charlotte. "I'm sorry." His voice was quiet, almost drowned out by the drizzle. I signed the divorce agreement. His lips pressed together into a thin line before he continued. "I didn't want to give up. I really didn't. But my mother asked me something the other day. She said, if 18-year-old Gavin met the woman you are today, what would he do?" He let out a breath, a bitter smile tugging at his lips. I thought about it for a long time, and I realized 18-year-old Gavin would let go of the Charlotte, who no longer loves him. The rain had been merciless last night, drenching everything in its path, and yet the documents in my hands were pristine, untouched by the storm. Gavin had shielded them with his body, keeping them safe through the long cold night. That same day we went to finalize the divorce at the office. I glanced at the agreement, expecting nothing more than the standard division of assets. But then Gavin made a revision. He adjusted the terms. 70% of our shared assets would go to me. He sold the house, the car, and according to the current market valuation of our business, he transferred a significant amount of money into my account. For a moment, I was stunned. I stared at him in disbelief. "Excuse me, what did you just say?" My voice wavered slightly, not from emotion, but from sheer confusion. I had given up my chance to study abroad, to stay by his side, to help him build the company from scratch. Back then, I never once questioned my decision. But now, as I stood there holding the divorce papers, watching the man I had once loved so deeply sever our final ties, I realized something. The love that had once bound us together had long since withered, and now at last, it was time to let go. Clearly, I had placed the wrong bet, but it no longer mattered. I told myself it's never too late to start over. Standing by the window of a quiet guest house by the North Sea, I watched as the city's news flickered across my phone screen. The headline was bold and unforgiving. Gavin's company, declares bankruptcy amidst severe cash flow crisis. The report detailed how Gavin had been forced to sell off all his shares and assets, his once thriving empire crumbling under the weight of financial strain overnight. He had fallen from a position of power into staggering debt, with no path to recovery. In the interview, he had only said one thing: "Charlotte, without you, I really am nothing." I stared at the words for a moment, then calmly exited the page, deleting the notification as if it were just another piece of irrelevant news. A new email notification popped up. My foreign mentor had responded without hesitation. I opened it and typed back my reply. "Understood. Professor, I've reviewed the study plan, and I'll be ready to begin in a couple of days." Pressing send, I set my phone aside and reached for the wine glass on the table, swirling the deep red liquid. Slowly, outside the window, the sea stretched endlessly beneath the night sky, waves rolling in a rhythmic lull. The wind carried a sharp, salty chill, but there was something undeniably liberating about this solitude. Some people lose themselves in love. Some stand still gazing at the sea under the quiet of the night, and some, like me, walk through the thorns until they finally emerge into the light. And just like that, my 10-year love story came to an end. From this moment on, I would live for no one but myself. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of salt and seaweed. As I stepped out onto the wooden balcony of the guest house, the North Sea stretched before me, a vast expanse of blue-gray water shimmering under the pale light of dawn. The sky was painted with soft hues of pink and lavender, the kind of beauty that felt both fragile and eternal. I pulled the thick cardigan tighter around my shoulders, letting the cool breeze brush against my skin. It had been a long time since I had woken up feeling this light. The guest house was small but cozy, the kind of place that travelers passed through without a second thought. Yet, for me, it had become a sanctuary, a refuge. I had arrived a week ago with just a single suitcase and no clear destination in mind, only the determination to start fresh. I had spent the past few days exploring the quiet seaside town, wandering through cobblestone streets lined with little cafes and bookshops, watching fishermen haul in their morning catch at the docks and feeling the warmth of fresh-baked bread from a nearby bakery as I walked past. It was a world away from the towering skyscrapers and suffocating expectations of Evercrest City, a place where no one knew my name, where I was simply another traveler. Passing through this morning, however, was different. Today, I was leaving. I had spent enough time lingering in this in-between space, savoring the quiet before stepping back into the real world. Now it was time to move forward. I took one last sip of my coffee, the bitterness grounding me before heading inside to pack. My suitcase was still neatly organized, just a few knit sweaters, a couple of books, my laptop, and the silver bracelet my grandfather had left me. Everything else I had left behind. The taxi arrived right on time. As I stepped into the back seat, the driver, an elderly man with kind eyes, smiled at me through the rear-view mirror, heading somewhere new. "Miss?" he asked in a thick local accent. I nodded, offering a small smile in return. Yes, somewhere new. The drive to the train station was quiet, save for the occasional hum of the radio. I watched as the sea gradually disappeared from view, replaced by rolling hills and stretches of golden farmland. The sight was peaceful, almost hypnotic. By the time I arrived at the station, the platform was already bustling with travelers. I pulled my coat tighter around me, rolling my suitcase behind me, as I found my seat in the train car settling in. I pulled out my phone and checked my emails. My professor had sent over a detailed schedule for my research project. It was real. Now, this new chapter of my life was no longer just a vague idea, but something tangible, something waiting for me on the other side of this journey. As the train lurched forward, I leaned my head against the window, watching the scenery blur. Past then, unexpectedly, my phone vibrated. I glanced at the screen, unknown number, for a moment. I debated ignoring it, but something in me hesitated against my better judgment. I answered, "Hello." There was silence on the other end. Then a voice I hadn't heard in weeks, hoarse, strained, and unbearably familiar. "Charlotte." I froze, my fingers tightening around the phone. It was Gavin. I could hear his shallow breathing, the exhaustion laced in his voice. He sounded nothing like the man who once stood confidently on a grand stage, the man who had built a company from the ground up, the man who had once promised me all the world. I said nothing, waiting for him to speak. He exhaled sharply. "I don't even know if you'll listen to me, but I need to say this." I closed my eyes, leaning back against the seat. A part of me wanted to hang up, to end this conversation before it even began. But another part of me, the part that had spent 10 years loving him, still felt the weight of his voice, like a ghost of the past, clinging to my skin. "I lost everything, Charlotte," he admitted, his voice breaking. "The company, the house, the people I trusted, they all left." I didn't respond. I thought I was invincible. He continued, almost laughing, but it was hollow. "I thought I could do anything, that I didn't need anyone. But I was wrong. I was so wrong." There was a pause, then, more quietly, he said, "I was wrong about you." Something in my chest tightened. "You were always the one holding things together," he murmured. "I was just too blind to see it. Too selfish, and now you are gone." I looked out the window, watching the fields rush past. "You're not saying anything," Gavin whispered. "Maybe you don't care anymore. Maybe you shouldn't. But his voice cracked. "I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to be without you." I closed my eyes, inhaling slowly. There was a time when these words would have shattered me, when hearing him admit these things would have made me want to run back to him, to believe that things could change. But now, it just felt empty. I opened my mouth. My voice, steady, detached. "Gavin." He sucked in a breath, like he was holding on to something fragile. "I'm not coming back." Silence, a long, heavy silence. Then finally, a soft, resigned exhale. I know I didn't say goodbye. I simply ended the call and let the phone fall onto my lap. The train carried me forward, farther and farther from the past. I would never know what Gavin did after that call. Whether he finally let go or continued chasing shadows, it didn't matter, because for the first time in a long, long time, I felt free. The city where I was headed held no memories of him, no ghosts lingering in the corners. It was a blank slate, an open road, a life waiting to be lived. And as I watched the horizon shift, I finally let myself breathe. Thank you for watching today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, so feel free to share your opinions, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more great stories. We'll see you up in the next video.